I want to start by sharing that my husband, Jake, is a wonderful man. We've been together for 8 amazing years and married for almost 7 of them. We've had our share of struggles like any other couple, but we've gotten through everything life has thrown at us together. Until now. Until this insane situation. Let me back up a bit. About 2 weeks ago, Jake and I came home after dinner out. We were both pretty tired from the day's events and eager to crawl into bed. We went through our usual nighttime routine, showering, changing into comfortable clothes, brushing our teeth, you know. We climbed into bed, kissed each other goodnight, turned off the main bedroom light, and curled up. I rolled over, glanced at the new nightlight Jake had just bought me because I can't sleep in complete darkness, and drifted off. I woke up with a start, feeling disoriented. After blinking a few times and trying to focus, I glanced at the alarm clock on the nightstand and saw 2:32 a.m. glowing in bright red numbers. I turned to look at Jake and immediately froze. He was lying on his back with his arms at his sides, but his head was turned toward me, expressionless, and his eyes wide open, staring straight into my soul. I almost stopped breathing. I just stared into those unblinking wide eyes for several seconds before the reality hit me and I realized something was definitely, horribly wrong. I immediately looked at his chest and saw that he was still breathing. "Jake? Honey, are you okay?" I said, reaching out to touch him. His body was ice cold, which made me panic even more. I sat upright in bed and quickly moved closer to him. His head tilted slightly, his eyes still wide open and locked on me. I grabbed both of his cold shoulders and began shaking him. "Jake, please, wake up, wake up." No response, just those eyes drilling into my soul. Tears streamed down my face as I reached for my phone. I grabbed it from the nightstand and began dialing 911 with trembling fingers. Before I could hit send, I heard snoring. I turned back to my husband. I froze again, but for a different reason. Jake's eyes were now shut, his face relaxed, and his lips slightly parted. He was resting peacefully. I set the phone down on the bed and climbed back over to hug him again, and he was warm. I sat there for a few minutes in disbelief, just staring at him while he slept soundly. Eventually, I set the phone back on the nightstand and lay down. I rolled over, away from him, and pulled the blanket over my head. Somehow, I fell back asleep despite my fear. The next morning, I woke to the smell of frying bacon and an empty space beside me where Jake had been. What had happened the night before now seemed like nothing more than a vivid nightmare. I slipped out of bed and walked into the kitchen. Jake smiled when he saw me. "Good morning, beautiful," he said sweetly, plating a few strips of bacon next to a heap of scrambled eggs. "Good morning," I replied as he brought me breakfast and a cup of coffee. "Sleep well?" he asked as he grabbed his own plate and sat beside me at the bar. Not really," I admitted quietly. Jake looked at me in confusion. "What happened? Why didn't you sleep well? Do you remember last night? Staring at me?" Jake looked even more confused. "No. Why would I do that?" "I don't know, but it was creepy. You were even ice cold. You wouldn't wake up and I almost called an ambulance." Jake set his fork down, got up from his chair, and wrapped his arms around me. "I'm sorry, honey. That sounds awful. Must have been some weird nightmare or something. But I don't think it'll happen again. You still love me, right?" I hugged him back and nestled into him, always. The next few days passed without incident. The strange, unsettling feeling of being stared at faded from my mind. I woke with a jolt. Why? I didn't know. My eyes scanned the room before landing on the clock. 2:32 a.m. I slowly turned to look at Jake and screamed. He was sitting upright in bed, but his head was turned toward me, expressionless, with eyes so wide they seemed inhuman. I slowly crawled toward him, whispering his name. No response. I gently touched his shoulder. Again, ice cold. I stared into those wide, unblinking eyes. For some reason, I flinched, and before I realized it, I had used every ounce of strength left in me to slap his face. It felt like striking a cold, unmoving stone. He didn't react. I froze as I watched him slowly lie back down, his eyes never blinking, never leaving me. I turned away to grab my phone again, but then I heard snoring. I spun back to see him. Once again, sleeping soundly, eyes closed, face serene. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and left the bedroom for the office sofa. I turned on the light and pulled the blanket off the couch. I curled up under it, lying on the soft pillows, trying to convince myself it was just a dream. No matter what I read, I couldn't bring myself to go back into the bedroom with him. I woke again, this time to sunlight flooding the room. My eyes finally landed on Jake's concerned face. "What are you doing here? You did it again. This time you sat up. You didn't look human at all. You scared me so much, Jake." I burst into tears. Jake's face softened as he reached out to pull me into a warm hug. I was almost afraid to touch him. He apologized again, said he had to rush to work, but promised to call a doctor. We agreed that a sleep study might help. I calmed down and stepped out to the porch to see him off. The best the doctor could do was schedule an appointment for next week. I dreaded nightfall and barely slept in the same bed as Jake, but he urged me to try again. A few more nights passed without incident. I started to feel comfortable again. Then tonight happened. At first, I woke up with blurry vision. I was confused by what I was seeing. After blinking a few times, a scream ripped from my throat. Jake wasn't lying next to me, nor was he sitting up. He was standing beside the bed, leaning down, just inches from my face. His eyes were wide, unblinking, and bulging the worst eyes I had ever seen. His face was expressionless, but it no longer looked like him. His skin was almost gray and aged, his mouth stretched into a stiff, straight line. His cheeks were sunken, and those horrifying eyes burned into my soul. My mind went blank, my body frozen in terror. Then his taut lips twitched in the strangest way, and a voice came out. "I see you." It wasn't Jake's voice. It was too deep, too raspy, too old. Finally, adrenaline kicked in. I slid off the bed, away from him, and ran. I bolted from the room as fast as I could, still feeling those huge, horrible, bulging eyes on me. I grabbed my car keys and ran out of the house. The car couldn't start fast enough. When it roared to life, I sped out of the driveway and down the street. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I fled the house and those haunting eyes. Memories came flooding back. I screamed and cried as every image I'd tried to bury clawed its way back into my mind. I had heard that voice before. That night, Jake had begged me to stay home, but some friends were going to a bar, and I refused. I was an alcoholic, and my problem had only been getting worse. I promised Jake I'd only have 1 or 2 beers, kissed him goodbye, and headed out. The next thing I knew, it was past 2 a.m., and I was driving drunk. I took a curve too fast. The radio was off, but I was still singing at the top of my lungs when a figure appeared in the road. My brain couldn't register or react fast enough. By the time I hit the brakes, it was too late. I hit the figure hard. The car skidded to a stop, and the figure lay in the road, several feet from the car. I glanced at the radio display before jumping out. 2:32 a.m. I ran to see what it was. I sobered instantly, praying it was a deer. It wasn't. It was an old man. His eyes were wide and bulging, staring straight up at me. He was in bad shape. Blood was pooling around him, staining the asphalt red. I heard his voice deep, raspy. "Help! I see you." I panicked. If I called the police, I'd lose everything, Jake. Our life together. I'd go to prison, maybe for life. I looked around. Mostly trees, a few houses far down the road, all dark. No lights, no people, no witnesses. Surely another car would come along and help, but there was no guarantee they'd be in time. I looked back at my victim. "I'm sorry," I groaned. I ran back to my car, started it, swerved around him, and sped off. I pulled into the garage and rushed inside. Jake was asleep. I stood under the hot shower, convincing myself no one had seen and someone else would help. I was half right. The story hit the news the next day, and while no one knew, it took hours before he was found. By then, it was too late. The old man had dementia and had wandered from home while his granddaughter slept. He had walked into the road and met a horrible fate because of my stupid choices. Somehow, I convinced myself he wouldn't have survived anyway. There was no point in ruining my life. I pushed the horrific event out of my mind and swore off drinking. Life went on. Things were normal. Better than normal, even. I didn't realize that the first night I saw my husband staring at me was the 1-year anniversary of the accident. Now it all makes sense. Whether the old man's ghost is truly haunting Jake or just a product of my guilty subconscious, it doesn't matter. He's haunting me. I'm writing this confession from a hotel room. I left my laptop in the car the other day. Lucky me, huh? To Jake, I'm so sorry for dragging you into this. To the old man, I'm so sorry for what I did to you. I'm turning myself in. I fear prison, but I fear being haunted even more. Hopefully, this will break the curse. Never drink and drive.